Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work, and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting. Good evening, Jackie.
Good evening, Robin. How are you doing?
Good. It's been a wonderful day. Very good day.
It's nice when those happen. You know, I'm sure the sunshine was out for you. And
yes,
It's nice when we can get outside, whether it's just for a couple moments, go on a walk. It's so healthy and so nice just to get some fresh air and some sunshine. And so I'm sure that was part of your day. I know you love that sun.
Yes, I do. Well, I am excited for our topic today. I talk a lot to my clients. I talk to my grandchildren about it. It is something that can really make a difference in not only our mood, but just our overall reactions and interactions with others. You speak a lot about confidence, and I agree. I think that is such an important thing to be thinking about when we're with our children and helping them to develop that confidence, and utilizing the growth mindset is just so incredibly important.
Yeah, for sure. And I was talking to actually a couple teens this week and a couple college students, and they were so focused on, the fear of failure. They were so focused on, I'm not going to do well. What if this doesn't work? And we talked about, there are going to be times where it doesn't work. And there are going to be times where something just doesn't go the way you planned. And so recognizing that those are opportunities to, learn different, to do different. And so, it really resonated with them. And we talked about not looking at things in terms of, I'm going to succeed in this kind of sometimes even perfect way. Everything's going to go well. I want to avoid any opportunity to make mistakes. I don't want to fail. I don't want to embarrass myself. And shifting that to, I want to try something new. And I want to, if things do not go the way I want to bounce back and pivot and do something different. And I'm going to judge success by the growth I've made. And that really is, the foundation of what the growth mindset is all about.
And going back, if you remember in episode 11, when things get better, we talked about this. We talked about the growth mindset. We really kind of dove in deep in that one. And if you haven't listened to it, I really encourage listeners to go out and review episode 11. And when we think about the growth mindset, we have to speak of Dr. Carol Dweck. She is amazing. If you don't know about the growth mindset, here's a little overview of it. Really about that positive thinking and forward thinking. It helps us to embrace mistakes, opportunities that don't go the way we want them to go, into a way that it's not really a failure, but it really helps to create openings for us in ways that we may not have imagined. It really brings an open mind perspective, and it helps us to have improvement. It encourages improvement, and ultimately that really leads to success, no matter how you define success. If we can encourage and have improvement, as you were saying earlier, Jackie, we're going to find that success.
Absolutely. And I think as we start to look at what self-confidence is really all about and how we foster it in our children, it is really about learning that you can tolerate discomfort and you can take on challenges. One mom said to me, I'm concerned when I watch my high school daughter play sports. She always stays in this comfort zone. She doesn't really do things where she might have any kind of risk of screwing up, she said, or making a mistake. And she said, I'm just concerned she could develop into such a better athlete if she could do that. And the mom, asked me to work with her on that. It's really also about being in touch with those insecurities and being able to recognize these are my strengths and these are, opportunities for improvement. So often we compare ourselves to others. And I've even shared, find somebody that you really want to, be a little bit more like. Maybe you respect them. Maybe they have key skills that you want to develop. And it's okay to look up to them, but you don't don't want to be comparing yourself in a way that you are putting yourself down. And I think as parents, we can do that, and our children can do that as well. And so being mindful of, and I always say to teens especially, don't say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your best friend. Our internal self-talk is key in developing
Right. And when we
confidence.
think about confidence and really those elements that we want to be able to model, foster, and develop for our children, one is, as you said, know your limits. Know not only your strengths, but the things that you're not as good at, and view those as opportunities versus I can't do those. When we have those limitations, we may need to reach out to others to help us. And so there's a great skill is communicating and asking for help. That is something I think is individuals develop more confidence, they're more willing to do that. And so being able to accept all of those pieces, I think is so important. Knowing your values, we talk a lot about this, Jackie, and I think that's one of the things I am the most proud of for our workbook is that we talk about those values and really allow each family to identify their own values and then to be able to live in service to those. Skill building is absolutely needed. As you said earlier, Jackie, another element is being able to see others in an accurate way. In comparing yourself, often we see others in this great way and then we minimize. We're so critical to ourselves. And the last kind of element of confidence is you've just got to go out there and do it. You kind of have to rip the Band-Aid off, go try it. And maybe your first goal is nothing more than I'm going to try to do it. I'm going to do it. It doesn't matter the outcome.
Oh, definitely. And I think our confidence is going to waver and ebb and flow. And, there's some things we may be more confident than others. And I was talking to a mom a little while ago and had overheard her talking to her child in the waiting room. And she was, you're beautiful, you're wonderful, you're amazing. And we kind of talked about it later. And we talked about, as much as the mom was trying to boost the child's self-esteem, it really, the child had commented that wasn't really helpful. When people overly compliment or, you're the best, you're wonderful, it's not helpful because it's not always taken as realistic, right? Like we know we're not the best. We know we're not perfect. But when, parents and family members start to really comment on things like, you did a really great job out there, you cheering on your teammates. Right. And even though that one play was really challenging, you came back and gosh, I know this class has been difficult for you all semester, but I noticed you tried some different techniques. You asked your teacher for help and really highlighting and encouraging and commenting on those areas that we're really trying to develop in our children. Our children are going to become more confident when they see that they can impact their outcome. When by doing something differently, they're building like those self-efficacy skills, right? They have that autonomy. They have the ability to influence their outcome. And that's really how confidence is done. And that's why so often we encourage parents not to rush in and save and interrupt the process. You might notice your child struggling and you might want to make them comfortable. You might want to smooth things out. But if we don't let our children have those experiences of working through adversity and difficulties, they're not going to develop grit and they're not going to develop that resilience.
I had a family session last week with a client and the parents, and we were talking about how things are going. I asked the child, what do your parents focus on? And they said, if I do it or I don't do it. It's always about that. And the parents quickly, well, yeah, we want you to be successful. We want you to be able to achieve. And if you don't look at those and evaluate where you are trying to go, you're not going to be successful. And they went on probably a couple minutes, and it was really interesting. This young lady looked at me and she kind of smiled, and it really opened up an opportunity to start discussing, do you look at the outcome or do you look at the process? And when we look at the outcome, we're looking at our end, what we want to have happen, versus the process is in that middle part and how we're making the gains. And the young lady was able to say, I feel often that you guys don't see when I'm making gains. You definitely see when things are not going well. But when I've made progress, I don't know if you always see that. And parents got a little defensive, but then when we were able to have them to step back and talk about it in this real safe way without undermining them or shaming them in front of their child, it was a really eye-opener for the family. And the child said, I know you guys are proud of me, but it really hurts sometimes, and I don't always feel confident. and the lack of confidence that she often had really impacted. And so as the parents have checked in with me this week to say that they've really worked on talking about what's happening during the process, they can see that she's been a little bit different, a little more communicative.
Definitely. And I like that point. And just looking at those barriers to communication as well as those areas where as parents, we all want closer relationships with our children. So I love that. And finally, we talk a lot about in our book and on this podcast, those purposeful versus those emotional reactive parenting things that we all do, right? I mean, we all get angry. That's human. We all get anxious. We all get worried about our children. We all feel guilty for something, right? As parents, we hold ourselves to a very high standard. And many of us carry a lot of emotions because we want to do a good job in our parenting and we want our children to benefit from that, right? And so as parents, we all make mistakes and we have to view our parenting as a process. Some days are going to look better than others, but really just for me as a parent, one of the most helpful things has been just assessing where I'm at emotionally. And if I'm feeling overly stressed, overly sad, overly anxious, overly any of the above, I really try to take a step back and not get into it with my kids because I know when I'm emotional, I have a tendency to maybe yell, to be more critical, to overly reassure, whatever. And so when I'm able to do that and recognize kind of where I am in terms of my own emotional state, and if I can be mindful of when I'm rational, kind of having those difficult conversations because we have to, right? We have to set limits and we have to set boundaries and we have to do things that can really cause conflict in the relationship. But when I'm able to stay calm and be mindful of my reactions, my child benefits, right? And our relationship benefits. And so that's been helpful for me.
Yes.
And I do, sometimes I make mistakes and then you kind of process that and you talk to the child about this is kind of what I wish I would have done differently. But I notice when I do that, my child starts to do it too. So when I can regulate, my child then, again, we talk a lot about modeling. That's been helpful for me. And I know we talk about that a lot in our parenting workbook. And we have exercises in that workbook to even take you through looking at what your hot buttons are and practicing different strategies to help with that purposeful parenting.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a great conversation. I really like it. Thank you, listeners, for joining us today. Thanks, Jackie.
Thanks, Robin. I will talk to you later. Bye.
Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.